We'll wrap up our work today by learning how to simplify fractions like this one. We know that it's considered bad form to have an I in the bottom of a fraction. But since my denominator is more complex than ones that we've done in the past, we'll have to use a new technique. Here's the technique. We multiply top and bottom by the same value. What value shall we multiply by? We'll multiply by the conjugate of this value. Instead of 3 plus 5i, we'll use 3 minus 5i. Whatever I use in the bottom, I must match exactly in the top. Let's do the top first. In the top, we'll distribute. Take this 6 and multiply once, multiply twice. 6 times 3 is 18. And 6 times negative 5 is negative 30, so that's negative 30i. We get an I in the top, but that's okay. We don't mind i's in the top. In the bottom, we'll FOIL. But when we FOIL, we're going to remember that when we FOIL conjugates, the outers and the inners are going to cancel out. Here we go. Multiply the firsts. 3 times 3. That's 9. If I multiply the outers, that's negative 15i. If I multiply the inners, that's positive 15i. Those add up to 0, so don't write them down. Now multiply the lasts. Where a positive times a negative is a negative, 5 times 5 is 25, and I times I is I squared. Let's keep the top. But remember, I squared is negative 1. Here's an I squared. Let's make this 9. This is negative 25 times negative 1. 2 negatives make a positive. In the denominator, 9 plus 25 is 34. That's a pretty great answer. Let's see if we can make it look like this. We'll break this into 2 fractions. Each one has a common denominator of 34. One numerator is 18. The other numerator is minus 30. There's minus 30i. Here's the real part. Here's the imaginary part. To make it even better, we can reduce. We'll divide by 2 and divide by 2. Divide by 2 and divide by 2. There's the best possible answer. When you do these on your homework, I want you to start with the problem and show all of the work. Let's try one more example. I know I shouldn't have I in the bottom of a fraction. We'll fix that by multiplying top and bottom by the same value. What value will I choose? I'll use the conjugate of the denominator. Instead of 5 plus I, I'll use 5 minus I. Whatever I use in the bottom, I must match exactly in the top. Let's do the top first. I'm going to use the FOIL technique. So multiply the firsts, 2 times 5. Then the outers, 2 times negative I. Then the inners, negative 3i times 5. Then the lasts. That's negative times a negative is a positive. 3i times I is 3i squared. Let's start to clean up the top. We'll keep the 10. Negative 2i and negative 15i is negative 17i. Remember that I squared is negative 1, and negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. The best way to show the numerator then, if I combine the 10 and the negative 3, 10 minus 3 is 7. Copy the minus 17i. Let's try the bottom. Now the bottom, those are conjugates. So when I multiply the outers and the inners, they'll add up to 0. Here we go. Multiply the firsts. 5 times 5. If I multiply the outers, that's negative 5i. When I multiply the inners, that's positive 5i. Those add up to 0, so don't write them. Now multiply the lasts. That's a positive times a negative is a negative, and I times I is I squared. But remember, I squared is negative 1. This is the opposite of I squared. That's the opposite of negative 1, which is positive 1. 25 and 1 is 26. That's a pretty great answer. Let's write it in the proper form. Common denominator 26. Numerators are 7 and 17. The 17 is negative, and the I goes on the end. Beautiful. All right, you've got a little more homework to do. You're doing a great job. Keep working hard. I'll see you later.